Alright guys, so first things first, click that link below. Let's go to our Confluence page. So we're going to come down here to Cisco switches, then trunking. And then if you want, just a key little cliff note here on what trunking actually is, right? And for all you IT noobs, trunking is just the technology or protocol we use for multiple VLAN traffic or inter VLAN communication, right? So I like to use this analogy that you think of a trunk as a 6-lane highway that goes both ways. The VLANs are the cars that travel on that highway. They can come back and forth, right? Because VLAN's logical segmentation of layer 2 frames. So you need a port or a protocol in that port that lets you send multiple different tags on those frames. So trunking, there's two different kinds, right? Or really I should say two different types of encapsulation we use of trunking. There's ISL, which is old Cisco proprietary that no one uses. And then we have the IEEE standard and the industry standard, which is 802.1q. So that puts a 4-byte header on the Ethernet frame to give it a VLAN tag, right? Kind of went over that in my VLAN section. But for this how-to, we're specifically going to go over a Cisco proprietary protocol called Dynamic Trunking Protocol. So Dynamic Trunking Protocol are these messages that get sent on the frame using Cisco Discovery Protocol that try to negotiate trunk or access links. Without getting too deep into the packet or what it does, we can just look here at this graph, right? So these are all the different modes and how they function with each other and what port they create, right? So auto and auto, or dynamic auto and auto, is an access. Desirable, trunk. And then pretty much everything else is almost all trunk, right? But desirable and access will give you access. Auto and access will give you access, and you get the point, right? Most of the time what we want to do on our enterprise or campus networks, guys, is just hard code it or statically set it, whatever you want to call it. We'll just tell the router to use trunk or access. But what a lot of people end up doing is they forget to actually turn off that negotiation. So just because you set that port statically to a trunk or an access port, it doesn't actually mean that DTP messages stop getting sent, okay? So this how-to, I'm pretty sure I made this like a couple months ago, guys. It's pretty in depth, right? It'll show you auto, desirable, what happens when you statically set it. It'll show you that DTP is still on when you statically set it, and that you got to turn it off using this command, switch port no negotiation. And I think that's all we got. And then on these switches, it'll show you that the automatic encapsulation protocol that it does when doing DTP, right, the dynamic negotiation of a trunk, is actually ISL. So let's just follow this how-to step by step, guys. So you can't see this, but I'm going to bring it over to my left monitor. I'm going to bring up GNS3, and I'm just going to follow this how-to, okay? So it looks like we're working on switch 3 and switch 4. And again, I have my how-to page up on my left monitor that you guys can't see. I'm just going to follow this how-to. So we're going to get into switch 3. I'm going to give it a host name real quick just to keep us clear. Oh, switch 3. Come on now. I'm going to go into gig 0. I'm going to do switch port mode, dynamic auto, and we're going to do that on both sides, all right? So what we're doing here is using auto, and we're going to see what kind of connection that this negotiates. Real quick, let me show you what I think is going on here. I think there's already configuration on here. Yes. So it's default. That's my fault, guys. As you know, in my routing videos, I have EEM scripts made to baseline them. But these switching videos are so basic, it's easy for me to just default interfaces and just move on, right? I don't need a whole applet to baseline. So now we're going to do this show command here. It's show interface the actual interface, and then switch port. This switch port command right here will tell you everything to do with exactly what it says, the layer 2 switching of that port. So what we need to look here is its administrative mode. Dynamic auto. The operational mode is access, right? So it looks like this made an access port. Easy way to check is to do show interface trunk, and we see nothing, right? But we can also see that its operational mode is access right here. So when both ports on each end are auto, what happens is they're kind of acting like passive. They're not telling the other one, hey, make a trunk, make a trunk. They're saying if I get a message saying to make a trunk, I will, but if not, we're going to stay access. So now let's go back into that same interface. And on switch 3, we're going to leave it auto. Switch 4, however, we're going to make it desirable. And we should see a trunk form. Because that auto mode over here is, again, passive, right? It's just doing what the other side tells it. And if both sides aren't saying anything, it's going to be access. But now that we have a desirable port on switch 4, we should form a trunk. And here we go. We have a trunk right here. We can see the mode is desirable. So that's what we set, right? We set it to desirable mode, and we're using DTP. And then it auto-negotiated to 802.1q actually. So this is interesting. Interesting because if we look at our how-to, when we did this configuration, it auto-negotiated ISL. So I wonder why it did that. I really couldn't tell you because I'm using the same network diagram, the same config, and the same iOS. But even if we see the switch port here, we see it's .1q. Let's just take a look at this configuration. Nope, negotiation auto. And here we go, desirable. The reason you don't see switch port mode dynamic auto here is because that's the default. So it's not going to be on our running config. That I misspoke earlier. This is to do with speed and duplex, right? So this is auto negotiating the speed and duplex on the other with the connected device. That's what negotiation auto means. All right. Now following our how-to guide, we're going to make gig 00 desirable. I'm going to shut this down just so we can see it come up and probably form that trunk, which it should. We'll see if it's still doing. See if that comes up. Show interface gig 00 switch port. So its operational mode is actually access. Let's just go back and look at our chart here. It says desirable should form a trunk. But what we're seeing here is that it's actually still an access. And this is why, guys, it's just preferred to just set these statically, right? Because of things like this. It's supposed to form a trunk according to the documentation. Switch port, mode, dynamic, desirable. But as we can see here, no trunk port. That's good, guys. This is why it's good to do these videos live and to see what we're actually getting. So now let's hard code it, right? Let's actually set it statically on both sides. So what we're going to do first, and not all switches are like these on newer iOS's, you can just put the mode to trunk and it'll automatically do .1q encapsulation. But on these viral switches, I need to hard code or actually set the encapsulation .1q. We don't want to negotiate. Then our mode will be trunk. We don't negotiate around here, right, guys? Trunk, encapsulation .1q, switch port, mode trunk. And without a doubt, we should have a trunk port, which we do. Some things to take note here, guys, the type of encapsulation, the VLANs allowed. Later on, I'll show you guys how to prune these. Another thing to take note is just because we set it to not do DTP, it actually doesn't mean that DTP isn't still coming across that interface. So somewhere in here, it's going to tell us that negotiation is still going on. Negotiating of trunking on. This means DTP is getting sent. So if I look at a Wireshark capture, that's gig 0101. Gotta switch those labels around. We should still see DTP coming across. Dynamic trunking protocol. It's still coming across on that interface. So let's get out of here. That Wireshark looked weird too. And now let's actually turn DTP off. How do we do that? Switch port, no negotiate. That easy, guys. Switch port, no negotiate. Now if we look at our interface, switch port, no negotiate. Remember, this is speed and duplex down here, guys. Don't get confused. And now let's go back. I really need to do login synchronous on that. For labs, guys, I know it's super annoying having those syslog messages come across. Look at our switch port. Negotiation is off. Kind of got rid of that quick. Show you again. Off right here, guys. Negotiation of trunking off. Now let's look at that Wireshark capture. Let's see. I don't see any DTP, guys. None. All I see is some spanning tree messages, some BPDUs coming across. Alright, guys. So that was an easy video, right? Just simple dynamic trunking protocol. Remember, it's Cisco proprietary, so if you're working on Juniper switches, HP, Dell switches, they might have their own version. I can't be too sure, but DTP is a Cisco proprietary protocol. So from everyone here at Intrepid Technologies, thank you for tuning in, and remember to learn every single day.